And now, ladies and gentlemen, from the heart of the Inland Empire, right here in sunny Southern California, it's Robert Cardoza Live, where we talk about politics, money, and you. This is the intersection of business and politics. And now here's your host, Robert Cardoza.
And welcome aboard. Here we are on a Thursday afternoon. It's beautiful outside. It's even though I say winter has arrived, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Right now, at 3:01 p.m. Pacific time, it's currently 65 degrees here in the heart of the Inland Empire in sunny Southern California. That's on its way down to 48 degrees. So, you know what? Very pleasant if you think about it. But you know what? We're going to be talking today about what's in the news. New legislation, the IRS loses, and then we'll continue our segment, the tribute to the late, great Paul Harvey, and the rest of the story. Today, we have our own Sean LaFave. Sean's going to be here, and we're going to be talking about polio, and it's going to be, really great in our segment geared for wellness. But at the top of the hour, normally I would tell you the 10 things that you need to know for today, and I'm going to do that a little bit later. But, we have some sad news for you. John Glenn, the very first American to orbit the Earth, has died at age 95. John Glenn, whose 1962 flight as the first U.S. astronaut to orbit the Earth, made him an all-American hero and propelled him to a long career in the United States Senate. He died today. The last survivor of the original Mercury 7 astronauts was 95 years old. Glenn died at the James Cancer Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, where he was hospitalized for more than a week, said Hank Wilson, communications director for the John Glenn School of Public Affairs. John Herschel Glenn Jr. had two major career paths that often intersected: flying and politics, and he soared in both of them. Before he gained fame orbiting the world, he was a fighter pilot in 2 wars, and as a test pilot, he set the transcontinental speed record. He later served 24 years in the Senate from Ohio. A rare setback was a failed 1984 run for the Democratic presidential nomination. His long political career enabled him to return to space in the shuttle Discovery at age 77 in 1998. A cosmic victory lap that he relished and turned into a teachable moment about growing old. He holds the record for the oldest person in space. More than anything, Glenn was the ultimate and uniquely American space hero, a combat veteran with an easy smile, a strong marriage of 70 years, and nerves of steel. Schools, a space center, and the Columbus airport were named after him. So were children. The Soviet Union leaped ahead in space exploration by putting the Sputnik 1 satellite in orbit in 1957, and then launched the first man in space, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, in the 108-minute orbital flight on April 12th, 1961. After 2 suborbital flights by Alan Shepard Jr. and Gus Grissom, it was up to Glenn to be the very first American to orbit the Earth. Godspeed, John Glenn, fellow astronaut Scott Carpenter radioed just before Glenn thundered off a Cape Canaveral launch pad, now a National Historic Landmark, to a place America had never been. At the time of that February 20th, 1962 flight, Glenn was just 40 years old. With all the business phrase, Roger, the clock is operating, we're underway, Glenn radioed to Earth as he started his 4 hours, 55 minutes, and 23 seconds in space. Years later, he explained that he had said that because he didn't feel like he had lifted off, and it was the only way he knew he had launched. During the flight, Glenn uttered a phrase that he would repeat frequently throughout life: 0G, and I feel fine. It still seems so vivid to me, Glenn said in a 2012 interview with the Associated Press on the 50th anniversary of the flight. I still can sort of pseudo-feel some of those same sensations that I had back in those days during the launch and all. Glenn said he was often asked if he was afraid, and he replied, "If you're talking about fear that overcomes what you are supposed to do, no. You've trained very hard for those flights." Glenn's ride in the cramped Friendship 7 capsule had its scary moments, however. Sensors showed his heat shield was loose after 3 orbits. Mission Control worried that he might burn up during re-entry when temperatures reached 3,000 degrees. But the heat shield held. Even before then, Glenn flew in dangerous skies. He was a fighter pilot in World War II and Korea who flew low, got his plane riddled with bullets, flew with baseball's great Ted Williams, and earned macho nicknames during the 149 combat missions. And as a test pilot, he broke aviation records. The green-eyed, telegenic Marine even won $25,000 on a game show, Name That Tune, with a 10-year-old partner. And that was before April 6, 1959, when his life changed by being selected as one of the Mercury 7 astronauts and instantly started attracting more than his share of the spotlight. Well, John Glenn will be sorely missed. A true American history. Godspeed, John Glenn. Well, now for the 10 things that we need to know for today. Your daily look at the late breaking news, upcoming events, and stories that will be talked about all day today and probably tomorrow. First up, who's forming unlikely political friendship? Well, an apparent rapport is brewing between Obama and Trump that few, if any, saw coming. And the GOP is at odds over Trump's softening stance on immigration. The president-elect's promise to work something out for immigrants brought to the United States illegally as children is dividing fellow Republicans. Well, what's heartening Assad's supporters? Well, I can tell you, backers of Syria's government are taking comfort in the growing sense of imminent victory in the key battleground of Aleppo. In rising human toll from Indonesian earthquake, beyond the more than 100 deaths, thousands of people are homeless or afraid to return to their homes in the region where killer quakes occur regularly. And where societal collapse strikes down once vibrant fishing industry, in Venezuela, with the economy in free fall, armed men and motorboats are attacking fishermen daily, stealing their catch and motors, and sometimes shooting them dead. That's what the Associated Press finds. Well, South Korean lawmakers introduced impeachment motion. The move by the opposition-controlled parliament sets the stage for a likely impeachment vote Friday on President Park. And a bus driver's deficiencies went unheeded. Among other problems in recent years, the man who crashed a Baltimore school bus into a transit bus, killing himself and 5 others, had been in at least a dozen car accidents. Well, an officer and a refugee. Police departments in a handful of U.S. cities are specifically recruiting refugees, hoping to build bridges to communities with significant refugee populations. Then, loss of habitat threatens the tallest land animal. Giraffes are now at risk of extinction, with the global population shrinking nearly 40% in just 30 years. What a sad thing. And then finally, Aroldis Chapman back with the Yankees. The hard-throwing closer is returning to New York with the highest-priced contract ever for a relief pitcher. Get this, $86 million over 5 years. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's really saying something, you know, if you think about it. That's a lot. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Trump chooses hardliners, but actually Trump heads west to meet with Ohio State victims and families. We'll talk all about that right after these brief messages, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
If you want to increase your client base and sales, then consider this, the Relationship Building Network at RBN. Given the current economic conditions and challenges, we all need to work smarter, make smarter decisions, invest our hard-earned dollars where it'll yield the best return for our investment. Many business professionals claim that the most effective networking group in Orange County is RBN. No other networking group or organization can offer what RBN offers. Make every year your best year. Join RBN and start reaping the benefits today. You know, nearly 3,000 businesses have joined RBN and experienced those benefits. Why join RBN? It's one group. It's one membership. It's no renewals. It's all through Orange County. RBN is a freestyle networking group. No mandatory attendance, no restrictions, no rules, and no penalties. Call them at 949-830-5776 or go to their website at rbninfo.com. That's 949-830-5776. If you've ever dreamed of having your own business to make your life secure, you know Water's Edge Wineries might be just the ticket. In 2004, their founder, Ken Lineberger, created the first winery franchise in California. It was a new concept with all of the functionality of a traditional winery, but without the vineyards. They purchased high-quality grape must from one of the largest winemaking companies in the world. Then they craft each wine carefully and bottle it right at their location. The winery was built to satisfy consumer demand for wine by the bottle and by the glass, but still kept the element of allowing customers to bottle their own custom vintage. Now, they're opening urban wineries across the United States under the brand Water's Edge Wineries. If you've ever dreamed of owning your own winery, it may be in reach right now through Water's Edge Wineries. Just give them a call at 909-468-9463, extension 700. That's Water's Edge Wineries, 909-468-9463. Have you ever found yourself caught between a rock and a hard place? The law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett might be just the answer for you. The attorneys of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett have been serving the Inland Empire since 1989. They're dedicated to the aggressive litigation of civil, criminal, and real estate matters. Over the years, they have recovered tens of millions of dollars for their clients. The firm's practice specializes in litigation of personal injury, accident, slip and fall, real estate, and criminal law cases. The firm provides clients with the care, accuracy, and dedication of experienced attorneys. Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett is located at 10300 4th Street, Suite 150 in Rancho Cucamonga, California. They've been providing the Inland Empire residents with outstanding legal services for over 25 years. They look forward to providing you with aggressive legal representation. Call them at 909-945-5000, where you can talk to a person, not a machine. That's 909-945-5000, the law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett. And now let's get back to our show where we talk about politics, money, and you.
And I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza Live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. And we're talking, news. Well, Trump heads west to meet with Ohio State victims and families. President-elect Donald Trump is taking on a sober task today that became all too familiar to his predecessor, supporting survivors after an outbreak of violence, this time families and victims from last week's attack at Ohio State University. Trump is flying to Columbus, Ohio to meet with several people who were slashed by Ohio State student Abdul Razak Ali Artan. Artan, 18 years old, first rammed a campus crowd with his car before getting out with a knife and stabbing students before being fatally shot by police. As Trump left for Ohio, there was word that he is expected to pick fast food executive Andrew Puzder to lead the Labor Department. That's according to a Republican official and a person close to the Trump transition, but both speaking on the condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to disclose the information before the official announcement. Well, you know what? Isn't it sad that he's already starting to have to deal with these kinds of tragedies? I think that's just a sad, sad thing. Well, Chief of Staff Priebus, some Trump loyalists are still a little dubious about that. When President-elect Donald Trump tapped Reince Priebus as his chief of staff, Republican leaders cheered the prospect of a close ally having top White House job. But as Priebus tries to wield his influence and bring more structure to the president-elect's freewheeling political organization, he's frustrating some longtime Trump allies who see him as too conventional a pick for an unconventional president. Others fear being left behind as Priebus fills out West Wing jobs. This dismay over Priebus stems in part from a belief among some Trump loyalists that the outgoing Republican National Committee chairman expected Trump to lose the election. They resent the president-elect rewarding people who thought he wasn't going to win, according to one top advisor. Still, Priebus appears to have Trump's trust. He's been given wide authority to name senior White House staff, according to people involved in the transition, and in shaping the decision on who will succeed him at the RNC, though deliberations over that post continue. You know, and that kind of a controversy is going to continue to go on regardless of what happens. I can tell you this, Russia says Aleppo combat is suspended. Residents say no let-up yet. Russia said the Syrian army was suspending combat operations in Aleppo late Thursday to allow the evacuation of civilians from besieged rebel-held neighborhoods, but residents and fighters reported no let-up in the bombing and shelling campaign on the opposition's ever-shrinking enclave. Russian Foreign Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, speaking in Germany after talks with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, said military experts and diplomats would meet on Saturday in Geneva to work out details of the rebels' exit from Aleppo's eastern neighborhoods, along with civilians who were willing to leave the city. Lavrov said the Syrian army suspended combat action late Thursday to allow some 8,000 civilians to leave the city in a convoy spreading across a 5-kilometer, that's about 3 miles, route. However, opposition activists said there was no halt in the government offensive. Yeah, well, maybe the right arm doesn't know what the left arm is doing. Total possibility, right? How about this? Dylan Roof's mom had a heart attack during the trial. Dylan Roof's mother suffered a heart attack not long after prosecutors described how her son planned a cold and calculated killing of 9 black church members in a racially motivated attack, the white man's attorney said in court documents on Thursday. Well, Ruth's mother collapsed and said, "I'm sorry," several times on Wednesday as family members and court security came to help her during the opening of her son's federal death penalty trial. Ruth's attorney mentioned the heart attack in court documents, asking for a mistrial, saying a survivor's testimony was so emotional that spectators and even the court personnel, including members of the prosecution and defense, were crying with her. The document didn't give the mother's current condition. Well, you know what? Later, Thursday, in an eerily silent courtroom, 360-degree computer images of the crime scene were shown to the jury. The jury showed the victims lying in pools of blood in the beige tile floor of the Fellowship Hall of Emmanuel AME Church. Most were clustered around circular tables where they had been holding a Bible study. You know what? I don't have any compassion for this young man. None at all. Well, stay or go. Tribe gives conflicting message to a protest camp. For protesters fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline, the messages from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation are confusing. The tribal chairman tells demonstrators that it's time to leave their camp and go home. Another leader implores them to stay through the bitter North Dakota winter. The conflicting requests show how the camp's purpose was widened beyond the original intent of protecting the tribe's drinking water and cultural sites into a broader stand for Native American rights. Camp occupants are working through the confusion, said Jade Begay, an organizer with the Indigenous Environmental Network. The rest of the world just needs to hold tight and be patient, she said. Since August, the camp on federal land near the reservation and the pipeline route has been home to thousands of people protesting the four-state $3.8 billion pipeline designed to carry oil to a shipping point in Illinois. You know, boy, when does this stuff stop? I just don't. I have no idea. I'll tell you when it's going to stop. It's going to stop right now, because we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about something a little more pleasant. The IRS loses. The first case, when salary is deemed to be a dividend, payroll tax has to be refunded. I'll tell you all about that right after these brief messages. Don't go away.
Isn't it time to shine the spotlight on your expertise? The Interview, starring you. Here's your chance to capture 5 minutes of fame with The Interview. This isn't just any interview. This is your opportunity to showcase your expertise and position yourself as a trusted expert in a one-on-one video interview hosted by Robert Cardoza, host of the nationally syndicated show Robert Cardoza Live and powered by AHA Studios. What is it? A professionally recorded video for your use. Robert Cardoza interviews you on the set where he records his show. Professional interview showcases your expertise and value, shot in a state-of-the-art studio. And what's in it for you? Gain credibility as an expert, earn the trust of your target market, educate in a way that intrigues your audience, gain a powerful marketing tool that offers dozens of uses, website, video sharing sites, social media, email, DVDs, direct mail, lobby video, resumes, profile building, all that kind of stuff. Association with the nationally syndicated celebrity. That's right. And let's talk about AHA Studios. AHA is a strategic marketing firm that leverages the powerful and visual persuasion to help your business create powerful messages that connect with your target market. AHA ventures way beyond strategy, delivering the marketing collateral you need to start driving a new business through your doors. AHA has a full-service, in-house, state-of-the-art production studio to bring your messages to life using video. Discover how to make the interview work for you. Call 949-831-2222. That's 949-831-2222. AHA Image Studios, Incorporated. Dr. Stephen Tidwell, Gentle Family Dentistry in a caring, personalized environment. Here at Dr. Tidwell's office, we are dedicated to helping you keep your teeth healthy. We are a state-of-the-art dental practice that still believes in traditional values, such as excellent customer service and individual attention. We have a special welcoming offer for you for just $39, a complete exam, personal consultation, professional cleaning, and all necessary x-rays. That's a $266 value for $39. Dr. Tidwell has 2 convenient locations and experienced staff to provide you with professional care and personal attention that you deserve. Call today. Don't delay. A great smile another day. Call 909-944-7308. That's 909-944-7308 for Rancho Cucamonga or San Bernardino. Joel Saltzman is Dr. Wireless. He has turned his considerable expertise into consumer credit risk and wireless security into a highly specialized independent web-based consulting enterprise targeting consumer credit risk analysis and wireless transactional security and monitoring. He works as a wireless analyst, veteran independent agent, and consumer liaison for most wireless telecom carriers and equipment manufacturers. For more than 20 years, corporate and private clients and media audiences have counted on his unvarnished advice while weighing the technology, performance, and cost differences between Sprint, Nextel, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Joel specializes in setting up mobile wireless hotspots to be used for disaster preparedness, business continuity, and mobile wireless merchant processing solutions. Call Dr. Wireless at 310-400-4900 or go to his webpage at drwireless.com. Again, call 310-400-4900 or his webpage at drwireless.com. You'll be glad you did. And now, back to our show.
The story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza Live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. We're at 3:23 p.m. Pacific time, currently 64 degrees here in the heart of the Inland Empire in sunny Southern California. Well, that's down from 66. What's going down? It's on its way to 48 degrees. And if you're listening to us on our globally syndicated network and you're in New York City, well, it's 43 degrees and it's clear. And if you're in Chicago, Illinois, wow, 23 degrees and it's overcast. But you know what? Let's put a smile on your face. Let's talk about the IRS Loses. And my first case today is when salary is deemed to be a dividend, payroll tax is refunded. The IRS and tax court held that the salary paid to a corporation by a corporation to its owner was excessive. Therefore, the company's deduction for it was disallowed. When the IRS submitted its calculation of tax due as a result of the disallowed deduction, the company and its owner protested that it didn't include a refund of the 1.45% Medicare payroll tax that each had paid on the salary. The IRS said that the tax court does not have jurisdiction over payroll tax disputes, so it cannot order a refund of the taxes. Well, the tax court ruling was this. Whereas here, in an income tax case, payroll taxes must be recomputed to reach the correct tax result, the court does have jurisdiction, and the refund, you bet, is ordered absolutely. Well, how about this one? The IRS loses. Death defeats a levy on a lawyer's bank account. Now, this is interesting. Give it a listen. An attorney died while owing back taxes. Now, a state court then ordered that his business bank account be distributed to clients for whom he had held funds and to trustees named to terminate the affairs of his law practice to cover their necessary costs and fees. But before the bank made the distribution, the IRS issued a levy on the account. They went to court, is what the judge said. After the state court's order, the deceased lawyer had no interest in the bank account and its funds, which now belong to his clients, creditors, and to the trustees as fees. Therefore, there was nothing for the IRS levy to attach to. Now, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But they keep trying. Yep. They try harder. How about this one? The IRS loses. A bar's licensed owner should not be treated as the owner. Sounds a little convoluted? Well, listen to this. Charles Manny wanted to purchase a bar, but a felony conviction kept him from obtaining a liquor license, so he reached a deal with his friend Ray Monk, who bought the bar, obtained this license, and opened the business accounts for it in his own name. Now, Manny then ran the bar as Chuck's Place, and Monk moved 200 miles away. Manny paid $2,500 a month to Monk that Monk treated as rent. So here's the snag. The IRS audited Monk and said that he was the bar's legal owner and taxed his income to him. Well, he went to court, is what the judge said. The monthly $2,500 payment did not vary, indicating that it was rent, not profit sharing. In all other ways, Manny and Monk acted as tenant and landlord, so the bar's income was not taxed to Monk. That makes sense. The IRS, they just keep on trying, don't they? Yeah, well, you've heard me talk about being a fly on the wall when the IRS does stuff. That's where we're at right now with this segment that we call Inside the IRS, just a little bit like the Twilight Zone. Yeah, well, you know what? These are not tax court cases, but these are things that the IRS is doing or thinking about, and things that if you know about them, you can use them to your advantage. Now, here's something for you that you might be interested in. When a routine audit turns into a criminal investigation, you know, it's not unusual for a revenue agent to uncover criminal conduct that's the intent to evade tax during a routine audit. For instance, personal expenses may have been claimed as business expenses, or income may not have been reported because the checks were negotiated by a check cashing service and were not entered as gross income on the tax return. How do you protect yourself? Do not let the accountant who prepared your tax return get involved in your audit. Why? He or she may ultimately become the witness against you if there's a criminal trial. Also, the accountant may incriminate you during the course of the examination. You may say, hey, my client told me that the personal expenses should be claimed as business expenses. If someone commits tax fraud, he should hire an experienced criminal attorney to handle the audit, starting with that very first phone call to the revenue agent. Don't get caught up. Don't ever think you can handle these yourself. Here's another one for you. The IRS is delaying refunds for international filers. Now, non-resident filing Form 1040-NR can expect to wait for their refunds relating to their last year's tax returns. These tax returns are now being processed in Dallas instead of Philadelphia, where they had been processed for years. Now, calling the IRS and asking about the status of your refund is just virtually useless, since many of these tax returns haven't even been posted on its computer system. What do? If the IRS does not have a record of your tax returns, send it another signed copy together with a letter explaining that you were informed that there is no record of the first return that you filed. Send the return by certified mail. Return receipt requested. Ask your accountant to mail the tax return on your behalf if you are located outside of the country. Try to get the name of the person that you can address the letter to. Your best bet? Follow up on every 2 weeks at least, and try to get a manager to take an interest in your case. That's the best way to do this. Now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking to our own Sean LaFave in his Geared for Wellness Corner. Sean's going to be talking about polio. He's been doing an awful lot of research on this, and he'll be talking about it in depth. You don't want to miss it. Sean LaFave in the Geared for Wellness Corner.
If you want to increase your client base and sales, then consider this, the Relationship Building Network at RBN. Given the current economic conditions and challenges, we all need to work smarter, make smarter decisions, invest our hard-earned dollars where it'll yield the best return for our investment. Many business professionals claim that the most effective networking group in Orange County is RBN. No other networking group or organization can offer what RBN offers. Make every year your best year. Join RBN and start reaping the benefits today. You know, nearly 3,000 businesses have joined RBN and experienced those benefits. Why join RBN? It's one group. It's one membership. It's no renewals. It's all through Orange County. RBN is a freestyle networking group. No mandatory attendance, no restrictions, no rules, and no penalties. Call them at 949-830-5776 or go to their website at rbninfo.com. That's 949-830-5776. If you've ever dreamed of having your own business to make your life secure, you know Water's Edge Wineries might be just the ticket. In 2004, their founder, Ken Lineberger, created the first winery franchise in California. It was a new concept with all of the functionality of a traditional winery, but without the vineyards. They purchase high-quality grape must from one of the largest winemaking companies in the world. Then they craft each wine carefully and bottle it right at their location. The winery was built to satisfy consumer demand for wine by the bottle and by the glass, but still kept the element of allowing customers to bottle their own custom vintage. Now, they're opening urban wineries across the United States under the brand Water's Edge Wineries. If you've ever dreamed of owning your own winery, it may be in reach right now through Water's Edge Wineries. Just give them a call at 909-468-9463, extension 700. That's Water's Edge Wineries, 909-468-9463. Have you ever found yourself caught between a rock and a hard place? The law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett might be just the answer for you. The attorneys of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett have been serving the Inland Empire since 1989. They're dedicated to the aggressive litigation of civil, criminal, and real estate matters. Over the years, they have recovered tens of millions of dollars for their clients. The firm's practice specializes in litigation of personal injury, accident, slip and fall, real estate, and criminal law cases. The firm provides clients with the care, accuracy, and dedication of experienced attorneys. Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett is located at 10300 4th Street, Suite 150 in Rancho Cucamonga, California. They've been providing the Inland Empire residents with outstanding legal services for over 25 years. They look forward to providing you with aggressive legal representation. Call them at 909-945-5000, where you can talk to a person, not a machine. That's 909-945-5000, the law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett. And now let's get back to our show where we talk about politics, money, and you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from his personal meditation lounge in Orange County, California, a professional dedicated to conquering many chronic conditions from autism to weight loss and everything in between. The nationally recognized wellness coach, consultant, and lecturer, Sean LaFave, in his Geared for Wellness Corner.
And I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. We're at 3:33 Pacific time. It is currently 64 degrees here in the heart of the Inland Empire in sunny Southern California. That's down from 66 degrees on its way to 48 degrees. Winter has arrived, but I can tell you, in Cleveland, Ohio, if you're listening to us on our globally syndicated network, it's 27 degrees. And it is snowing. But you know what? If you don't like the snow, that's okay. Just move on over to Wichita, where my good buddy Sean LaFave's at. It's 27 degrees there, too, but it's clear. So you get to pick what you're going to get. Hey, Sean, good buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing, Robert?
I'm doing great. Aren't you glad you're not in Cleveland?
I am, on a general basis from day to day, I'm glad I'm not in Cleveland. So the answer is definitely yes. I am glad I'm not in Cleveland, especially since it's snowing. So, but I got a 4-wheel drive Jeep, so I can deal with the snow.
Well, that's a good thing. Hey, listen, you heard about the sad news today that we lost John Glenn.
John Glenn, yeah, man. I tell you what, that's he was a childhood hero of mine. He was orbiting the earth before I was even born.
Yeah, he was definitely a hero. 95 years old, lived a nice, long life, a fulfilled life. And you know what? And I talked about him during the news segment of the show today, and I signed off with it, just saying, Godspeed, John Glenn, on your final journey. Quite a guy. Never did anything to embarrass the United States.
And that's exactly the thing that I thought of as I was looking at his. I posted a picture on Facebook, and I obviously just, said that we lost a hero today, and And I hope that he's flying higher now than he has ever flown. And that was my thought is, the guy never was part of the drama. He never did anything to embarrass himself or his family or our country or, there was no scandals. He lived the life that most people dream of living. And you can't even say most people don't. I mean, you could hold in your hand the number of people who live a life like he has.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, just a tremendous man and a great icon for young people all over the world to look up to. Now, listen, we've got a fantastic show. I don't want to cut it short at all. You're going to be talking about polio. You've done a lot of research about polio, so I'm going to just let you get into it. If you don't mind, if things come up that create some kind of questions in my mind, I'll interrupt you a little bit.
Well, I would expect that, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm going to start out. I want to ask you, and it's actually, I'm glad that you and I are having this discussion right now because you grew up before there was a polio vaccine. In fact, you grew up during a time when polio was at its very worst in this country.
Yes, I did.
And so you've seen it. You've seen what it can do, and you've I'm sure read the stories. And so, if I was to say to you, if I was, let's say I asked 1,000 people, I won't even ask you this question. Also, let's say I asked a room full of people, and I said, if everybody here, a couple hundred people in a room, everybody got polio, was actually infected with the polio virus, what would happen to the average person? What do you think most people would say to answer that question? And I've actually asked this question of a few people the last couple of days to see, but go ahead.
If everyone were infected with it?
If we had a room full of 200 people, and I said, let's say all of you right now are going to be infected with polio virus in and after, before the polio vaccine and all that, what do you think would happen to the average person?
Well, from experience, I can tell you it's just devastating what I've witnessed in my lifetime. I've actually seen people who are suffering from polio in iron lungs that most people don't even know what those are. I've seen them in braces and crutches and in all kinds of things, and it's debilitating, it's dehumanizing, and it's just a horrible, horrible thing for those people that suffered that disease to go through.
Yeah, and that's what I would expect. Some answer along those lines from most people. Most people talk about the paralysis and people dying and the severe injuries that go along with it. And then the next question would be, as far as when polio was at its worst, what percentage of the population in the United States? Now, I'm working off the United States numbers here. I'm not working off of worldwide numbers, so I'm going to stick with the United States because that's where we live. That's what we know. What do you think during the worst year, by the way, was 1952. That's when polio peaked in this country. What do you think? What do you think the percentage of people that were actually contracted polio and were affected by it during that year?
I honestly don't know, but I would have to say, based on the population of the United States, or you're saying worldwide or just the United States?
No, just the population.
Yeah. I really have no idea, but I would have to guess less than 1%.
Okay, well, that's a good guess, and it's actually right. It's you're even that is an overstatement, but yes, that is absolutely right. It is less than 1%. And so, I kind of did a little timeline, a little history of polio, and I even went back and I said, okay, I went to the CDC website and I looked at reputable websites like Mayo Clinic and stuff, and I said, what happens to a person who gets polio? And so I crunched a bunch of numbers and I put together a list of everything that happens. And I got to tell you, even as a person, and of course, my stance on vaccines and really how the immune system operates and on, what my point of view is on that I think that really the vaccines are, not really necessary. And so when I looked at the numbers on polio in this country, I was even astonished with the numbers, even with my point of view. I was pretty surprised. Okay, and so I kind of went back.
Before you move on, can you translate that less than 1% to an actual number?
I can, and I'm going to.
Okay,
in just a little bit. Yeah, absolutely, I can.
Okay.
So So polio was discovered actually back in the 1800s. The polio virus was discovered, and it was discovered in 1905 by a Swedish physician named Ivar Wickham, and he discovered it in 1905 that it was actually contagious. So now we figured, okay, we've got this virus, it's contagious, what do we do? In 1935, there were 2 different teams that tested a polio vaccine, but neither one of them were successful. In fact, both of them did everything from kill test subjects to just simply infect them, and that was everything from the scientists who worked with it to the chimpanzees to human adults and children as well. And so that was a failure. But of course, we're going to still be working towards that. And so 1951, a guy named Jonas Salk, he was a medical doctor, and he and his team developed and cultivated polio virus in monkey kidney tissue. And the funny thing is they say that polio can only be contracted, the polio virus, and the actual full term, we say polio, but it's actually poliomyelitis. And this is going to go back to all that stuff that I talked about last week and Tuesday with the myelin sheath and all these different diseases and how they affect the neurological system. Remember, you asked me the question. You said, well, we're getting these. You had sent me an email or with a link to this article about these people getting polio-like symptoms. And my thought process went, well, something that these people are getting is affecting their neurological system the same way that polio did. And the fact is it's actually true. Polio affects the myelin sheath. It gives you myelitis. It actually is an inflammation of the myelin sheath around the nerves. And so anyway, they were able to, but they say that only humans can contract it. Well, somehow they were able to harvest this on a kidney tissue, and because obviously you want to produce large amounts of it, so they found a way to harvest this on the kidney tissue of a monkey. And in 1952, they put it to test. That was the worst year on record. There were, and I'm going to give you these numbers, but I'm going to break these numbers down here in a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. There were 58,000 cases of polio virus contamination in the United States, 58,000. And there were 3,145 people who died that year. And there were 21,269 who were left with some sort of either moderate to severe disability, whether it was a partial or a full paralysis, or maybe a paralysis that set on and then they overcame over time, like somebody, the most popular example of that is President Roosevelt, who was stricken. He was in a wheelchair, but eventually went on to walk on his own. I think he used a cane. But so we've got these numbers, and that's when it peaked out. And so now I'm going to break those numbers down for you. And this is where I was shocked to find out, because when most people think, oh my gosh, polio, if we don't keep this under wraps, if I talk to someone who is pro-vaccine, and I even suggest, I get this a lot because I'm very vocal about this. I say something about, well, the vaccine's not necessary, especially nowadays. We have not had a natural case of polio in the United States since 1979. People say, oh, well, you want to go back to the days when people were dying and there was this horrible, plague, and the reaction that I get is as if I'm saying, look, you know what, I don't care if millions of people die. And that's really kind of how people come across. They think that if we went back to the time when we had polio, that we would have thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of people dying left and right, and it would be this major catastrophe to our society, something that we may not even be able to recover from, almost like a new plague. Well, back in 1952, the U.S. population was about 157 million people. And like I said, there were 58,000 cases of polio in the United States that year. This was the worst year on record in the United States. And so the numbers that I'm going to give you are not going to correlate with some CDC statistics that I'm going to give you as far as what happens to the average person, because this was such an overwhelming year. But even this year was worse than what the CDC says happens on average. But we're going to come back to that as well. But we had, out of 157 million people, we had 58,000 who were infected with polio. And that comes out to about 37/100ths of a percentage of the population was infected. So we're talking approximately 1/3 of 1/10 of 1% of the entire population was even contracted polio. Okay. That means that 1 out of 2,700 people contracted polio. The number of people who died, like I said, was 33,145, which comes out to 2/1,000ths of a percentage of the entire population actually died from it. So, and again, that's one in almost 50,000 people actually died from polio, which that number blew me away. I actually would have expected it to be much bigger. And then the number of people who were left with some form of paralysis, there was over 21,000, and that comes out to about 13/100ths of a percentage. So just over 1/10 of 1% of the population actually had permanent injuries.
But you're not saying that because those numbers are low that they shouldn't have made an effort to try and eradicate polio, are you?
I'm not saying that that's a reason to eradicate polio. That those are insignificant numbers. I would love to see us get rid of polio, but what we see going on here, and I'm going to come back to these numbers here in a little bit too. Here's what makes this number or these numbers significant. You've heard of the term herd immunity. People throw it around nowadays, especially when it comes to the vaccine world, like it's the holy grail of understanding how vaccines work. You've heard that term, herd immunity. Mm-hmm. Okay, so most people, when I ask them what does herd immunity mean, they say, well, if we vaccinate enough people, and the CDC wants to tell you that it's 98% of the population is vaccinated, then that means that those who can't get vaccinated due to some sort of medical condition, whether it's a compromised immune system or whatever, that those people are protected because everyone else has been vaccinated. And we know that vaccines are limited in how they work, that they don't give lifelong protection. I know that if I get like something that's going on right now, let's take something that we actually have active in our country as opposed to polio, which is not, it's possible today to get the mumps right now, which is not life-threatening at all. It is if you have a compromised immune system, but for 99.9% of the population, it's not going to be life-threatening at all. It's going to make you sick. You're going to have some fevers and some swelling and so on. But with the mumps vaccine, what we know is right now, especially among college campuses, we're having outbreaks of the mumps right now. And what they're saying is that, well, we vaccinated these kids when they were children, like toddler age, and we know that the vaccine only lasts for about 10 or so years. So somewhere in their teens, the efficacy of the vaccine wore off, and then they went to college, and now they're living in these conditions where they're close together, they're living in the dorms, they're constantly in contact, maybe their hygiene is the best because, they're busy, whatever the case might be, and so they're passing mumps back and forth, and we see it on college campuses. Well, the problem with that is if those kids, I say kids, they're young adults now, but had they contracted mumps when they were kids, they would have lived through it, they would have been fine, and they would have had a lifelong immunity to that, and they could be in close quarters as you want. They're not going to get mumps again. Well, now the vaccine is worn off. The problem here is you've got young adults, and specifically for young men, once you've reached the age of puberty, you're past puberty, if you contract mumps can actually lead to testicular swelling and actually lifelong infertility is one of the side effects of contracting mumps as an adult who's past the age of puberty. And so there is a downside to immunizing unless you just want to live off of a lifelong structure of immunization every 10 years, let's say, which of course the pharmaceutical companies would love that because there's a lot of money to be made there. But so I talk about this small percentage of people who get sick, and I would never say, they're expendable. It doesn't matter. Obviously, they matter to somebody. They were moms, dads, children, whatever they were. There's someone who loved them, and so that's not my point. What I'm looking at is, are we trading something else by giving us vaccines? Are we now bringing something else that would be maybe even worse than a polio epidemic? And now here's the kicker, though. I talked about that herd immunity. When you have herd immunity, the way it actually works, it has nothing to do with vaccines. The pharmaceutical company has adopted that term to push their vaccines, but here's what herd immunity does. And this is exactly what the United States was going through in the late 40s and the early 50s, is you have a community that has never been affected by a disease, in this case, polio. And now all of a sudden the polio virus is introduced, and we don't have any natural protection against it. So lots of people become afflicted with polio. And it seems like a whole lot more than it really is, because you can see it everywhere around you. Like you said, you saw people personally, and it was only less than 1/10 of 1% of the population was even afflicted by this. But you still saw it. We saw it. It was on the news. It becomes a big deal. But what happens is we get infected with polio, and the vast majority of people live through that. And now you have a lifelong immunity. And so next year, when next year rolls around, we've got new babies and maybe people who weren't living in that area or just didn't get infected with it. Well, when polio comes around, it doesn't spread as quickly. I might be on one side of our town, and you might be on the other side. Well, you get infected, and there's enough people who have herd immunity, who have already contracted polio, that it can't make a chain all the way back to me like it did the first year. And so what we did is we went through this herd immunity back in the late 40s and the early 50s, and because it scared people so much, we decided we need to stop this right now. Well, what we did was we stopped a natural process of herd immunity. Yeah, it hurts. It's no fun. I'm not going to say that it's not a big deal, because it is. But the thing is, once you get over that hump and you come back down the other side, the herd immunity stays. And now you've got, babies. We know that polio affects children more. Well,
so I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this herd immunity that you're alluding to here is the same thing almost as an evolution, in that right. your body will evolve and create its own defenses against these things.
Right, exactly. My body will, our collective body will, the community at large will create an immunity. Once, let's say you've got a woman who, she contracted polio and she lived through it, and now she's pregnant. Well, her natural antibodies go through the placenta to protect the baby during pregnancy and while she's breastfeeding, which is the very natural. Remember we talked about Tuesday, the further you asked me about, different these plastics and all these things, we talked about the garbage and how do we change it? And I said, the further you get away from nature and how we were intended to live, the closer you get to disease and destruction and death. And so it used to be we would breastfeed. Women would breastfeed. There was no bottled formula for women to give their babies. So even as they breastfed, that natural immunity built into the mom is being passed on to the baby. So the baby is building its immune system. And so now all of a sudden the baby gets exposed. Maybe it's a child at this point, a year and a half, 2, 3 years old.
But the antibodies are already there.
The antibodies are already there. The body knows how to deal with it. It doubles up the antibodies. It goes, oh, I kind of recognize this, and it attacks it, kills off the virus.
So are you saying that perhaps these people that have come up, Jonas Salk and these other people that have come up with these vaccines and these protections for polio, let's just say polio at this point, because I think that probably applies to everything, but let's just say polio, that they've actually done society a disservice by not letting it run its course so that we could build an evolutionary defense against it?
Right, exactly. That's exactly what they've done is by implementing a vaccination program. What you do is you take away the long-term effects, the long-term benefit of herd immunity, because now I don't get the opportunity to be subject to things like mumps when I was a kid. Didn't you say you had mumps when you were a kid?
No, I had mumps. My parents also wanted me to get chicken pox, put me with my brother who had it, sleeping with him, but I never did catch this chicken pox. But I did get the mumps.
Yeah, and I thought you said you had the mumps. And of course, you're fine. You lived here. It's not a big deal. Mumps is actually good for a child. It's a good.
Oh, I got to spend a week. I got to spend a week away from school. Are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great when you're a kid.
With a towel wrapped around from my chin all the way to the top of my head, right?
Yeah. So, and it's not a big deal. Mumps back then was not considered. Now they talk about mumps as if it's a deadly disease, and it's not deadly. It's deadly if you've got some sort of horrible, compromised immune system or whatever the case might be. Mm-hmm. But for the vast majority, and I did the same thing with my son when it came to chickenpox. I actually sent him off to his friends to go play every time one of them got the chickenpox. And it took 3 tries before we finally got him to come down with the chickenpox. So by creating these, and there is a chickenpox vaccine nowadays, which is ridiculous to me. Why subject yourself to all the toxins that are built into the vaccine for something that is absolutely not life-threatening? The worst thing that happens out of it for 99.999% of the people is they get a little scar in their face or something like I've got one because I scratched one of them off. My son has the same thing. He scratched one off. He and I both have a little tiny scar on our face that most people don't even notice. But yeah, when you try to replace this natural herd immunity, now what happened with polio back in the 40s, we saw it skyrocketing and it peaked at 1952, and then it started crashing back down. That's only going to happen once in a community. Now, if people in Guatemala had never gotten it, and someone from the United States went to Guatemala, and think about what happened with smallpox when the I don't know if it was Columbus or whoever it was that brought it over and gave it to the Native Americans, and they talk about how this was this mass. It probably affected less than 1% of the population there too. But the point is, it can do this process in a whole new region. But once it's happened in a community, it's not going to happen again. The United States went through it. We were done. And it was on the downhill slide. And matter of fact, before Salk implemented in 1952, we had, and I'll go ahead and go back to the timeline now, and I'm also going to go back to what happens to the average person. But going back to the timeline, so like I said, 1952, we had 58,000 cases. And that in 1955, Salk vaccine trials showed that it was 80 to 90% effective, and the United States government licensed what was the inactivated polio vaccine the same day. As soon as he said, "Look, these are our results. Look, it's working," because it was a move of desperation, and you know how it is in any aspect of your life. If you're desperate, you're going to do something stupid. If you're desperate,
you don't care what the ramifications are if you're desperate. Listen, let's hold that thought and deal with it when we come back from this commercial break. Okay.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with Sean LaFave in the Geared for Wellness Corner. We're talking about really some in-depth information about polio and some of the misnomers about that. So don't go away. We'll be right back with Sean LaFave and more information about polio. You're not going to want to miss this. If you want to increase your client base and sales, then consider this, the Relationship Building Network at RBN. Given the current economic conditions and challenges, we all need to work smarter, make smarter decisions, invest our hard-earned dollars where it'll yield the best return for our investment. Many business professionals claim that the most effective networking group in Orange County is RBN. No other networking group or organization can offer what RBN offers. Make every year your best year. Join RBN and start reaping the benefits today. Nearly 3,000 businesses have joined RBN and experienced those benefits. Why join RBN? It's one group. It's one membership. It's no renewals. It's all through Orange County. RBN is a freestyle networking group. No mandatory attendance, no restrictions, no rules, and no penalties. Call them at 949-830-5776 or go to their website at rbninfo.com. That's 949-830-5776. If you've ever dreamed of having your own business to make your life secure, Water's Edge Wineries might be just the ticket. In 2004, their founder, Ken Lineberger, created the first winery franchise in California. It was a new concept with all of the functionality of a traditional winery, but without the vineyards. They purchased high-quality grape must from one of the largest winemaking companies in the world. Then they craft each wine carefully and bottle it right at their location. The winery was built to satisfy consumer demand for wine by the bottle and by the glass, but still kept the element of allowing customers to bottle their own custom vintage. Now, they're opening urban wineries across the United States under the brand Water's Edge Wineries. If you've ever dreamed of owning your own winery, it may be in reach right now through Water's Edge Wineries. Just give them a call at 909-468-9463, extension 700. That's Water's Edge Wineries, 909-468-9463. Have you ever found yourself caught between a rock and a hard place? The law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett might be just the answer for you. The attorneys of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett have been serving the Inland Empire since 1989. They're dedicated to the aggressive litigation of civil, criminal, and real estate matters. Over the years, they have recovered tens of millions of dollars for their clients. The firm's practice specializes in litigation of personal injury, accident, slip and fall, real estate, and criminal law cases. The firm provides clients with the care, accuracy, and dedication of experienced attorneys. Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett is located at 10300 4th Street, Suite 150 in Rancho Cucamonga, California. They've been providing the Inland Empire residents with outstanding legal services for over 25 years. They look forward to providing you with aggressive legal representation. Call them at 909-945-5000, where you can talk to a person, not a machine. That's 909-945-5000, the law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett. And now let's get back to our show where we talk about politics, money, and you.
And I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza Live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. We're at 4 p.m. Pacific time. It's still 64 degrees here in the heart of the Inland Empire in sunny Southern California. If you're listening to us on our globally syndicated network and you're in Paris, France, it is currently 39 degrees and clear. And if you're in Rome, Italy, it's 41 degrees and clear. And you know what? If you're listening to us, no matter where you are in the world, boy, have we got something for you. We're talking to our own Sean LaFave and the Geared for Wellness Corner. We're talking about all the facts, the actual facts about polio. Some of these are going to be a little disturbing to you, and some of them you're just going to outright say, hey, I don't believe this or I don't believe that. But you know what? You need to listen. The information is the most valuable commodity that we have to offer you here. And I can tell you this, Sean LaFave isn't going to just snow you with information that shores up his side and his thoughts. He's giving you facts. So listen to him. Whether you want to agree with him or not, you need to know the other side. Sean, you got the microphone.
Thank you for that, Robert. I appreciate that because, as I was doing this, that old saying came to mind, that statistics don't lie, but statisticians do. And, it's easy to put a narrative in your brain and go, okay, I got to find the numbers that fit this. And unfortunately, that seems to be the case with most research nowadays. But really, had I created my own narrative, it wouldn't have been even as outrageous as this one. And this one is based strictly off the numbers. And so yeah, information is key. And I think that's the biggest problem we have with, whether it's the medical choices that we make, it's with a lot of things, obviously, clearly, I believe that with vaccines is that a lot of people are dealing off of either a complete lack of information or a huge amount of misinformation. And so, and that's even really what the government did back in 1955. Like I said, the Salk vaccine, they did their own studies and they said, hey, it's 80 to 90% effective. The government's, as we said, they're desperate. And when you're desperate, as an accountant, that it's the companies that are failing and are most desperate to recover themselves that they get the high interest rate loans. They go out and they take the biggest risk. And it doesn't always work out. In fact, sometimes that risk that they take with that high interest becomes debilitating and they can't even recover from the loan. And of course, every guy can relate to the old adage, the girls all get prettier at closing time. It's, when you're desperate, you do things that, you one day wake up to and you go, why did I do that? And that's really what happened with the government back in 55. So like I said, we had at our worst in 1952, 58,000 cases of polio. In 1955, 3 years later, the year that the Salk vaccine was introduced, we were already down to 28,000. So about half just over half the cases, and we were at just over 1,000 people had died. So we were actually at a third of the deaths. Just 3 years later, we were already over the hump. That herd immunity was already kicking in. And so we were on the downhill side before the vaccine was even introduced. Well, the vaccine was introduced in April 12th of 1955.
Well, you know what I was just thinking, Sean? More people die from a more horrible disease voluntarily in this country just by smoking than who died from polio.
Oh, absolutely. By far. Yeah, we lifestyle ourselves into deaths far worse than what polio would do to us. Far worse. And so the vaccine was introduced in April 12th. On May 8th, like 4 weeks later, they realized, this is paralyzing people. It's got a lot of complications. It's actually making the problem worse. They suspended the program only 4 weeks into it, and it only took them let me see, that was May 8th. On May 27th, so 19 days later, they said, okay, we've reformulated it. We got it figured out now. In 19 days, we got it figured out. They reopened the program. And the Salk program, or the Salk vaccine, really, if you talk to the experts, those who aren't trying to push the agenda of more vaccines, will tell you that the whole program was a complete failure, and we know it was a complete failure because the government scrapped it as soon as they had a more viable alternative. But by around 1956 to 1957, which is only the year after, and with 2 years, about a year and a half or so after the vaccine was introduced, and you know that the whole country wasn't vaccinated the first year or two. That was, they go into certain areas, they start vaccinating more and more. It's not like everybody, boom, gets a vaccine. They didn't have 157 million vaccines to give out in 1 year. So they had to, introduce it into the population. Well, within a year and a half, the cases went all the way down to 5,000 with the drops in death went down to only 250 people had died from it. So in a matter of 4, not even 5 years from the peak, we were already down to where it was a minimal. It was 250 people died, and just a few thousand people were even infected by this. So everything was cut down to less than 10% of the original numbers from just 4 or 5 years ago, right? And that was the natural progress, because we know the vaccine did not make if it made any difference, it made a minuscule difference. But we also know that the Salk vaccine created a lot of damage along the way. So the interesting thing is I talk about then I want to get to some other numbers, and I'm going to come back to the subsequent vaccines that we've got in our country. I'm talking about the symptoms. So we know the vaccine, the Salk vaccine, it was well documented that it was paralyzing people. It did not work. It was not effective. It did not change the trajectory of the downward decline in cases of polio. You saw no change. The line stayed almost exactly the same. So it didn't change it. It wasn't like all of a sudden it started to drop even worse. The drop was already going, and it stayed at the same rate until it got down to almost zero just a few years later. But I asked you earlier, I said, well, what would happen to the average person? And you went off, about, the iron lungs and people dying and people paralyzed. And that's what I get from most people. They think of the worst case scenario.
Well, that's what I witnessed. I didn't witness anything that was really nice and pretty, I can tell you.
I didn't see anybody go from looking like Danny DeVito to looking like Brad Pitt. I couldn't say it didn't happen. Well, and the reason that we remember those, of course, it's very emotional. You see somebody dying, and that's an emotional thing. And if you want somebody to remember something, tie it to an emotion, and they won't forget it ever, whether it's a good emotion or a bad emotion. But now I'm going to go off of the CDC. This is straight off of their page called "What is Polio?" And they say in the page it says polio or poliomyelitis, which again, meaning that it affects the myelin sheath around the nerves. That's how it affects you. Is a crippling. They put in here. It's a crippling and potentially deadly infectious disease caused by the polio virus. It's spread from person to person and can invade an infected person's brain and spinal cord, causing paralysis. Okay, that's the way they present it in their very first sentence. That is death and destruction and paralysis, and it's horrible. Well, then they go on. And the very first thing they say under symptoms is most people who get infected with polio virus, about 72 out of 100, will not have any visible symptoms. So 72% of all the people who actually got infected. So those 58,000 people that got infected, now the numbers are a little bit higher because that was a really bad year. It maybe wasn't a good year for sanitation, on and on. But they're saying, look, on average, 72% of people who become infected with the polio virus are completely asymptomatic. And you're going, wow, okay, I would have not I didn't even expect the number. I expected that number to be a really small number, and it was a huge number. And then they said about 1 in 4 people. So you've got now 72%. Now we've got 28% of the population left over. What happened? That's just of the people who get infected. There's way more people that never even get infected. But of the 28 that are left over that actually are symptomatic, what symptoms do they get? Well, about 1 in 4. So it's actually 25. It's actually more than 25. It's actually over 27%. So of the 28% that are left, or let's say there's 28 people left, actually more than 27 of them are going to have symptoms that include sore throat, fever, tiredness, nausea, headache, and stomach pain. Basically, it sounds a lot like the flu. So you go from having no symptoms to having flu-like symptoms, and then you've got less than 1% of the people who are actually infected by the polio virus who go on to get And then they say those symptoms go away within 2 to 5 days. By the way, the ones who do become symptomatic, those go away within 2 to 5 days. But then it says a smaller proportion. Matter of fact, if you look on the Mayo Clinic's website, they say in rare cases. And of course, when they talk about something like if somebody gets damaged by a vaccine, they say, well, it's a rare case. We don't need to worry about it. Those are the people that the medical community will tell you are expendable, because they're saying, look, for the greater good, those are rare cases where this person was paralyzed by a vaccine or this person was killed by a vaccine. They call it rare. But on the Mayo Clinic's website, when they talk about polio and people getting paralyzed, they say, well, it's a rare thing, that it doesn't happen very often. And so in that case, we need to make sure that we protect ourselves from it, still, even though it is rare. But what they're saying is, on the CDC, it says a smaller portion of people with the polio virus infection will develop other more serious symptoms that affect the brain and spinal cord. And of course, that's, paralysis, that's meningitis, and that's paresthesia, which is where you get the feeling of like kind of that neurological pins and needles kind of feeling. Mm-hmm. And so what they say is paralysis is the most severe symptom associated with polio, and it can lead to permanent disability and death. And here's the kicker: between 2 and 10 out of every 100 people who have paralysis. Now, I just said that 1%, less than 1% of the population actually gets paralysis. Of those people, somewhere between 2 to 10% of those will die or have so where basically they can't breathe. So the death occurs in around 5% of the people who actually get paralysis. So even the CDC is saying, look, you know what? A very tiny percentage of people die from this. Less than 1% even gets. These are people who actually get infected. Less than 1% actually get paralysis, and about 5% of those people actually die from it. So the numbers are super, super tiny. It says even children who seem to fully recover, later on they can actually have a relapse of it, like 20, 30, 40 years. But in the beginning, you'll see, and what they think that happening there is the degradation of the myelin sheath. The body actually creates extra nerves to compensate for it, but those nerves are more temporary and they begin to degrade themselves over time. But the point is, when most people think of polio, and matter of fact, it's actually the term, like I said, is poliomyelitis. The CDC says, you know what? It's not even called poliomyelitis unless you become paralyzed. Outside of that, they don't even consider you to have the disease. So if you're one of the asymptomatic, or you're one of the people who even get the flu-like symptoms, they're saying, look, we don't even consider it to be a disease at that point. You're just fighting a virus. So really, we're talking it's like 0.5% of the people who contract the polio are actually considered to have poliomyelitis, because those are the ones that deal with the paralysis. And of that 0.5%, around 5% of those will actually die from it. So we're talking really small numbers, and I'm going to get back to why these numbers are so important. Again, I don't believe these people are expendable. The polio virus, we know that it only infects humans for whatever reason. You know, they're able to grow it on monkey kidneys, and it's contagious, and it spreads from person to person through contact, and it stays in the throat and intestines, and that's where it lives. And what they're saying is that it's the easiest way. Matter of fact, they say that the easiest way to spread it is through contact with feces, and they actually put in parentheses here poop. And I like the word poop, so I'm going to use the word poop from now on, since the CDC gets to use it. So if you're touching a person's poop that's been infected, they even say less common is through droplets from a sneeze or a cough that you can get infected. Basically, you get it by touching someone else's poop. And there was I'm sure this has happened more than once, but I read a story probably 15 years ago. I remember reading it, right after it happened. This was a young man. He had a child who was given, back when they were doing the live oral polio virus. They gave it to his child. The child was still not potty trained. He changed the diaper, and the live polio virus was in the poop of the baby. And this guy contracted polio. So now as an adult, he was given polio, and it was a direct result of the vaccine. Matter of fact, every case of polio in the United States since 1979 has been a direct result of the polio virus, with the exception of people who contracted it in another country and then came back here. But the ones that were actually contracted in the United States were all directly as a result. But what they're saying of the virus itself, of the vaccine itself, but what they're saying is, look, you know what? Really, the biggest way that this gets spread is through human feces, through poop. And so that kind of begs the question of, well, what was going on 75 years ago that we were touching each other's poops? Well, we didn't have the indoor plumbing like we do now. You know, we didn't have sanitation like we do now. And if you look at historically countries that have overcome major illnesses and diseases and stuff, it's right after they go through the process of sterilizing. You go to India, in places where they don't have indoor plumbing, where they still bathe in the river, where they still wash things out in the open, you know, and they have bathrooms, you know, they have outhouses or whatever, you know, that there's, you don't have a toilet that you sit on, flush, wash your hands, and then walk out. And so the point is, we've gone through the herd immunity, and we're not touching each other's poop on a regular basis like we were. I know nobody was actually like touching each other's poop, but we were so unclean that we maybe didn't wash our hands after we went to the bathroom, and then we would touch a tool at work, and then our buddy would touch the tool at work, and then he'd wipe his mouth, and all of a sudden, boom, he contracted polio because I had it. I didn't realize it. Maybe I was a silent carrier of it. And so our sanitation methods in this country have gotten so refined that things like polio and a lot of these other diseases, they're not even a factor. Even if we were going to go through the herd immunity process, it wouldn't be as bad now as it was back in the 40s, because we're a much cleaner society.
Well, you do understand that you're going to hit a lot of resistance with this, right? These are astounding facts that you're giving us here, and there are going to be a lot of people, especially from my generation, who were exposed to these things, that are going to look at this with somewhat of a jaundiced eye, because it's absolutely astounding to hear this. And I'm not saying that it's not accurate and that it's not factual, but it just blows my mind that science could make such a stupid decision as to hurt society for the long term because of not recognizing the detriment or the downside of taking care of a disease like this.
Yeah, and I believe that initially, at least, that, you know, people like you and Salk, who pushed this through and he should never have, I still want to believe that he had the best of intentions, and he was hoping to do the right thing and to do a good thing, and thinking, hey, if we can make people immune somehow, then, and theoretically, I still believe that that's a good thing. If you could show me that you could inject a virus into me and it would give me lifelong immunity, and there was and you didn't have to give me all the neurological toxins, like, you know, there was mercury, there's aluminum, there's formaldehyde, there's actually tissues, in this case from monkeys, there's actually human DNA tissue that's used in a lot, there's formaldehyde, I think I may have said that one already, but there's a lot of different neurotoxins that go into monosodium glutamate even, and you know, if you could tell me you could do it without all those toxins, I would actually be, I'd give me the vaccines. I think it would be great. I think that, you know, ethically, that if we can do this the right way, vaccinations are wonderful. But when you understand how the human system works, and I say the human system like as in my body, and the human system as in the greater body, the greater community works, you realize that the vaccines aren't necessary, and they actually are harmful. And you know, in this case, you know, we went through the herd immunity, and we were on the downhill slide by the time that the vaccine was even introduced. If you want to stop something like that, you've got to have the vaccine before the herd immunity kicks in.
Yeah,
and
you know what?
And trust me, I know when it comes to kickback, I get it all the time, and I still stand firm in my.
Yeah. And you know what? And here's the thing: you have the courage of your convictions, and you have knowledge behind you, and so that's why you can do these things. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get some feedback and some you're not going to take some heat for it. But anyway, we have got to take a break. We're going to come back with our own Sean LaFave.
I got really more awesome numbers when we come back. What I want to do is I'm going to put all of this into perspective so that you can see where I'm going with it. Right when we get back, it'll be awesome.
Okay, we'll be right back with our own Sean LaFave in the Geared for Wellness Corner.
Isn't it time to shine the spotlight on your expertise? The Interview, starring you. Here's your chance to capture 5 minutes of fame with The Interview. This isn't just any interview. This is your opportunity to showcase your expertise and position yourself as a trusted expert in a one-on-one video interview hosted by Robert Cardoza, host of the nationally syndicated show Robert Cardoza Live and powered by AHA Studios. What is it? A professionally recorded video for your use. Robert Cardoza interviews you on the set where he records his show. Professional interview showcases your expertise and value, shot in a state-of-the-art studio. And what's in it for you? Gain credibility as an expert, earn the trust of your target market, educate in a way that intrigues your audience, gain a powerful marketing tool that offers dozens of uses, website, video sharing sites, social media, email, DVDs, direct mail, lobby video, resumes, profile building, all that kind of stuff. Association with the nationally syndicated celebrity. That's right. And let's talk about AHA Studios. AHA is a strategic marketing firm that leverages the powerful and visual persuasion to help your business create powerful messages that connect with your target market. AHA ventures way beyond strategy, delivering the marketing collateral you need to start driving a new business through your doors. AHA has a full-service, in-house, state-of-the-art production studio to bring your messages to life using video. Discover how to make The Interview work for you. Call 949-831-2222. That's 949-831-2222. AHA Image Studios, Incorporated. Dr. Stephen Tidwell, Gentle Family Dentistry in a caring, personalized environment. Here at Dr. Tidwell's office, we are dedicated to helping you keep your teeth healthy. We are a state-of-the-art dental practice that still believes in traditional values, such as excellent customer service and individual attention. We have a special welcoming offer for you for just $39, a complete exam, personal consultation, professional cleaning, and all necessary x-rays. That's a $266 value for $39. Dr. Tidwell has 2 convenient locations and experienced staff to provide you with professional care and personal attention that you deserve. Call today. Don't delay. A great smile another day. Call 909-944-7308. That's 909-944-7308 for Rancho Cucamonga or San Bernardino. Joel Saltzman is Dr. Wireless. He has turned his considerable expertise into consumer credit risk and wireless security into a highly specialized independent web-based consulting enterprise targeting consumer credit risk analysis and wireless transactional security and monitoring. He works as a wireless analyst, veteran independent agent, and consumer liaison for most wireless telecom carriers and equipment manufacturers. For more than 20 years, corporate and private clients and media audiences have counted on his unvarnished advice while weighing the technology, performance, and cost differences between Sprint, Nextel, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Joel specializes in setting up mobile wireless hotspots to be used for disaster preparedness, business continuity, and mobile wireless merchant processing solutions. Call Dr. Wireless at 310-400-4900 or go to his webpage at drwireless.com. Again, call 310-400-4900 or his webpage at drwireless.com. You'll be glad you did. And now, back to our show.
And I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza Live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. We're talking to our own Sean LaFave in his Geared for Wellness Corner. We're talking about polio and all of the things that you've heard, whether you thought that it was devastating, and it is, whether you thought that it was maybe something that we should endure, and maybe we should have, or maybe you are skeptical about all the information you're getting. You know what? Wouldn't be the first time that the CDC gave us information that was less than accurate. But you know what? There's one thing that I do trust, and that's my good buddy Sean LaFave. His integrity is below no one's. This man, when he gives it to you, it's because he's researched it and he believes it. Sean, you got the microphone, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you, Robert. And you made the comment, whether we should have endured this or not, or whether you think we should have or shouldn't have. The fact was, we did endure polio in this country, and the problem is we were on the downhill slide by the time that the vaccine was introduced. So we were basically putting a remedy to a problem that was already solving itself. And I'll go through the timeline, and then I'll come back to these numbers that I was talking about. So, like I said, in 1955, they introduced the Salk vaccine, which failed. They put it back on the market, and it really never made a difference. And those who do the research, you can find article after article to say that really the Salk vaccine was a complete failure. In 1959, matter of fact, we actually showed an increase like I said, around 1957, we were down to just over 5,000 cases and about 250 people died. Well, around 1959, that number was back up to 9,000 cases and almost 500 people had died. So we almost doubled the amount of cases of polio in 1959, and then just about double the amount of people that died as well. And so again, the Salk vaccine was really considered a failure. It just didn't work. But then in August of 1960, the oral polio, which was a live virus, the oral polio vaccine, was created by Albert Sabin, and it was licensed for use in the United States, and it was implemented in 1960. So by 1960, we were back down to the 1957 numbers. And by 1962, the cases of polio in the United States was down to 910, and the number of deaths was down into the double digits. So, so already by, the early 60s, we had gone from 58,052 down to less than 1,000, 910 cases 10 years later in 62. In 1968, the Salk vaccine was taken off the market. They realized that this was something we didn't want to continue. It was phased out. Whenever the government phases out something, it usually means that it wasn't really working. It's not just because they had something better. It was usually because it just wasn't doing the job it was supposed to be doing. And of course, like I said before, the last known case of polio was in an Amish community. The Amish do not vaccinate, by the way, and they still don't have mass diseases because of the herd immunity that we went through. But in 1979, there was a few people in the Amish community that contracted it. We haven't had a natural case since then, and it was considered eradicated in 1994. And since then, we actually have an improved version of Salk's vaccine. They actually now, 40 years later, they finally figured out how to do Salk's inactivated vaccine. So they've rebooted that because it's not paralyzing people. It's actually effective and not as dangerous as, the original one was very dangerous. And so they're using that now, and they have completely phased out the oral polio vaccine. That was in the year 2000, was when the oral polio was phased out.
That oral polio vaccine, was that the sugar cube?
No, that sugar cube was a different one. I'm trying to remember if they did polio on a sugar cube or not. There was another one that they did, and I can't remember.
Well, I know that when I first got when I first went in for the polio stuff, it was a sugar cube that they gave us to eat.
They may have been that they did it on a sugar cube. I know. Well, I did it because the Air Force gave me one, and it was like in a vial. They just break it open, and they literally you just pour it into your mouth and drink it. It was, but again, this is the Air Force. You're probably given, the polio vaccine that they want to give out. They want to give to kids, and so if we could put it on a sugar cube, that's going to make it taste good. Kids are going to be, as Mary Poppins. Was it Mary Poppins that said that? A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Yeah.
So you want to make kids enjoy it if you're giving them a vaccine. But yeah, it was. I can remember. I would assume they did it on a sugar cube, but the oral one was, you just literally took it orally, and it was a live vaccine. The virus itself was still alive. They didn't kill it like they did with when Salk killed his. He actually put it in formaldehyde. That was part of the vaccine. Was formaldehyde. That's what inactivated it and made it a dead virus. But the live oral polio virus, what they were finding was it was very transmittable. I could take an oral polio vaccine, and I'm still contagious with polio for a couple of weeks afterwards. And that's how, like I talked about, that father who contracted it from his, I can't remember if it was his daughter or son. It doesn't really matter, from his toddler. But the fact of the matter was, every person who took oral polio vaccine was contagious for a couple of weeks afterwards. But we're not going around touching each other's poop anymore. So it's the sanitation in our country is so sterile nowadays that this disease wouldn't have much of a chance. But here's the numbers that I want to kind of put these in perspective. Like you said,
because you only have about 8 minutes.
This is actually, we're going to run out. We're going to run out of data at this point before we run out of time.
Okay.
But so we're good now. I'm kind of on the home stretch. But you said I'm going to get a lot of kickback, and I do get a lot of kickback. And I've had this conversation, not this in depth, but I've had this conversation with people, and even the data that I show people that is factual and accurate, they still want to go back to the old way of learning that they've learned. Look, this is going to kill so many people if we don't continue with these vaccines, then we're going to have another plague. Well, here's some of the numbers. I took the year 1952 because it was the worst. I'm comparing other things to the very worst year of in the United States for polio. And in 1952, like I said, there were 3,145 people who died from polio. Now, there was about another 20,000 who had anywhere from mild to moderate to severe paralysis as well. But there were 3,145 people who died. In that same year alone, 36,088 people died from automobile accidents. Over 200,000 people, including 4,000 children, died from cancer. And cancer is a much greater problem now than it was in 1952, a much greater problem. And in that same year, 1952, 20,000 people, including 1,500 children, died of tuberculosis. And, I look at this, and you brought up smoking, and there's a lot of other things that we can bring up that's, eating McDonald's. I mean, it's just simply, there's a lot of things that we can bring up. But when someone says, the sheer numbers of people that would die without this vaccine, I would go, just last year alone, 35,000 people died in the United States from automobile accidents. But there's no outcry. Nobody's losing their mind over it. If I say, well, the polio vaccine is really not necessary in this country anymore because we've gone through herd immunity and it's been eradicated, it's not here, people look at me like I've literally been accused of being a murderer before. But if I say, but 35,000 people died of automobile accidents, people make excuse after excuse after excuse. And I'm going, this is a 100% preventable death. We don't have a vaccine that is 100% foolproof, but all you have to do is stop driving in cars and nobody will ever die of an automobile accident.
Or smoking cigarettes.
Or stop smoking. Will we reduce 100% of cancer from lung cancer? No, but we'll reduce a lot of it.
Yeah.
And just a lot of the lifestyle changes that we could make to reduce cancer, to reduce diabetes. Look at diabetes. Diabetes wasn't a problem when you were a kid. Even when I was a kid, diabetes really wasn't that big of a problem. But nowadays, what used to be called adult onset diabetes is now called type 2 diabetes because children are getting it. We can't call it adult onset diabetes anymore. And it's killing more people than polio has ever killed. In fact, we have, in this country alone, like I was talking about, I'm using motor vehicle. I like using car analogies a lot because most people drive. Most people know enough about cars to know about, whether it's insurance or whatever I'm relating it to. But 3.6 million people have died in the United States from car accidents. That's an astounding number. Over 3.5 million people dead just because we all want to drive cars instead of walk or ride the bus or, go ride a horse or whatever the case might be. And so when someone says, well, all the people that are going to die, I go, it's minuscule compared to what we're doing to ourselves that we make excuses for every single day. So for someone to tell me that the polio vaccine is about saving lives, I can't. That's an argument that I find I have a hard time buying into. I get it. It'd be nice if we could prevent deaths, but there's so many other areas. If you just want to save lives, there's so many other areas that we could spend money on outside of vaccinations. Matter of fact, I think I read the statistic that said that because of vaccinations, 6 million people, I think we talked about this last week, 6 million people, we save up to or as many as 6 million lives worldwide from using vaccines, and that's out of over 7 billion. Well, there's and that may be true, but it may also be that we're preventing things like herd immunity from doing its job. Yeah, that's a painful process to go through. But here's what I was saying, and I know this is going to go kind of way beyond the whole realm of what I'm talking about, and I don't want to sound conspiracy theorist or anything like that because that's not who I am. But imagine if the next World War breaks out. We know that the next World War is going to look very different than the last two. It's going to be fought on a technological front. You were talking weapons that can shut down. They have these generators now that they can shut down computers from a distance, shut down the computers in your cars, in your business. We can shut down. They're going to go after the grid. If you want to, any war that you've ever fought, the number one way to win is to shut down communication. Imagine if we went into a world war and the enemy found a way to shut down our communication. We're heavily dependent on that. You think people are going to all of a sudden go, gosh, I better stick to my vaccine schedule? They're not going to stick to their vaccine schedule. And now all of a sudden, all these vaccines that we've had, they start wearing off. If we ever get to a point in society where we stop administering vaccines on a regular basis, we're going to open ourselves up to every single one of these viruses that we've been fighting because the vaccines have given us a temporary protection. And now all of a sudden herd immunity is going to kick in, and it's going to kick in hard, and we're going to have another black plague. And I know that's a bit of a stretch, but the point is, unless we can continue vaccinating ourselves on a regular basis for as long as humans are around, we don't actually have a true immunity to these viruses. And we are easily setting ourselves up for another plague. We've stopped doing those natural things. We've stopped having natural childbirth. Women don't breastfeed like they used to. All these things that we used to pass on the immunity to children, we're having a problem with that. But even going back to, strictly the numbers, okay, it was one in, several thousand people that were affected by polio, for instance. And that's just one disease. I know that there's, the number's going to get much worse if we add all diseases in. But look what we're doing to our children with asthma, with autism, with ADHD, with allergies, with all these things that kids have that you and I didn't grow up with. 2 generations into this, all of a sudden, kids are having health conditions that didn't exist when I was a kid. They certainly didn't exist when you were a kid. You and I are only one generation apart. I make it sound like you're 100 years older than me, but it got worse in my generation. It got worse in my son's generation, and this generation. Right now, the numbers are 1 in 45 children in the United States are going to develop somewhere on the autism spectrum. And is having 1 in 45 children on the autism spectrum better than having 1/3 of 1/10 of 1% of the population, 1 out of 50,000 or whatever the number, subject to polio? And that's the question we have to ask. It's not that people are expendable. It's a matter of, in what area of life do you want us to be expendable?
What's acceptable?
What's acceptable? Yeah. And right now in our society, what we've decided is what's acceptable is damaged children who, I knew one kid when I was growing up who had asthma. My son, if he forgot his asthma inhaler at school, he had an asthma, no big deal. He would just borrow one from one of his friends.
Well, Sean, unfortunately, we're out of time, and I have a feeling that we could probably explore this subject a lot more, and related subjects. And I think when you start breaking it down to the numbers, the way that you have, and it sounds pretty astounding, especially when you start relating to these diseases and these viruses and these vaccines and the number of people it affects, as opposed to people that die in automobile accidents, people that die from cancer because they've been smoking, or abusing themselves in one way or another. It just seems to me, matter of fact, maybe even more, even these daredevils that go out there and they do this, I forget what they call it, the jumping thing. This extreme stuff. You know what? I think that these diseases probably kill a lot less people than that. Anyway, my friend, this was just fascinating. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and keep everybody around you happy, will you?
Robert, same to you. I had a fantastic time today, and I will look forward to talking to you again on Tuesday.
Yeah, and any idea what we're going to be talking about?
Man, at this point, I don't know. I think too much time working on this.
All right, buddy. Hey, this was really terrific. Thank you so very much, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye. All right. And the rest of you folks, stick around, because when we come back, we're going to talk about the birthdays for the day, the secret daily teaching for your life, the Harvard business tip of the day, and interesting but useless facts. And after that, we'll do our tribute to the late, great Paul Harvey and the rest of the story. And the story today is going to be, let's see here, the death of John Dillinger. It's not going to be what you think it is, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
If you want to increase your client base and sales, then consider this, the Relationship Building Network at RBN. Given the current economic conditions and challenges, we all need to work smarter, make smarter decisions, invest our hard-earned dollars where it'll yield the best return for our investment. Many business professionals claim that the most effective networking group in Orange County is RBN. No other networking group or organization can offer what RBN offers. Make every year your best year. Join RBN and start reaping the benefits today. Nearly 3,000 businesses have joined RBN and experienced those benefits. Why join RBN? It's one group. It's one membership. It's no renewals. It's all through Orange County. RBN is a freestyle networking group. No mandatory attendance, no restrictions, no rules, and no penalties. Call them at 949-830-5776 or go to their website at rbninfo.com. That's 949-830-5776. If you've ever dreamed of having your own business to make your life secure, Water's Edge Wineries might be just the ticket. In 2004, their founder, Ken Lineberger, created the first winery franchise in California. It was a new concept with all of the functionality of a traditional winery, but without the vineyards. They purchased high-quality grape must from one of the largest winemaking companies in the world. Then they craft each wine carefully and bottle it right at their location. The winery was built to satisfy consumer demand for wine by the bottle and by the glass, but still kept the element of allowing customers to bottle their own custom vintage. Now, they're opening urban wineries across the United States under the brand Water's Edge Wineries. If you've ever dreamed of owning your own winery, it may be in reach right now through Water's Edge Wineries. Just give them a call at 909-468-9463, extension 700. That's Water's Edge Wineries, 909-468-9463. Have you ever found yourself caught between a rock and a hard place? The law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett might be just the answer for you. The attorneys of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett have been serving the Inland Empire since 1989. They're dedicated to the aggressive litigation of civil, criminal, and real estate matters. Over the years, they have recovered tens of millions of dollars for their clients. The firm's practice specializes in litigation of personal injury, accident, slip and fall, real estate, and criminal law cases. The firm provides clients with the care, accuracy, and dedication of experienced attorneys. Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett is located at 10300 4th Street, Suite 150 in Rancho Cucamonga, California. They've been providing the Inland Empire residents with outstanding legal services for over 25 years. They look forward to providing you with aggressive legal representation. Call them at 909-945-5000, where you can talk to a person, not a machine. That's 909-945-5000, the law offices of Blomberg, Benson, and Garrett. And now let's get back to our show where we talk about politics, money, and you.
And I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza Live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. We're at 4:42 p.m. Pacific time. Currently 63 degrees here in the heart of the Inland Empire in sunny Southern California. It's down from 66 degrees on its way to 48. And you know what? If you're listening to us on our globally syndicated network and you're in London, England, well, it's 54 degrees and it's overcast. And if you happen to be in Vienna, Austria, 27 degrees and some fog. You know what? If you missed the last a couple of segments of our show, you missed a tremendous show with our own Sean LaFave and his Geared for Wellness Corner. He was really giving out tremendous, unbelievable statistics about polio. In fact, that he put it in a perspective that we could all understand. If you didn't hear it, you know what? Go either to our archives, get my app, and you can catch it there, or go to Podomatic, or go to Spreaker.com, go to any of them, and go to iHeartRadio, go to YouTube, any of them, and the show's right there. You're going to want to hear Sean as he talks about polio. But right now, we want to talk to you about the Harvard business tip of the day, and the management tip today is Get some perspective on your stress. Yeah, you know what? Here's some good news. You don't need to get rid of stress to live a happy, fulfilling life. But you do need to separate yourself from your stress. This doesn't mean that you pretend the stress isn't there. It means you identify less strongly with the emotion, realizing it's a bodily response to a feeling about your view of the world. Instead of thinking, I'm stressed, try, I feel stressed. This subtle shift helps you step back even just a bit so that you can gain the perspective needed to move forward. To do this effectively, you have to understand why you're stressed. Where does the feeling come from? Curiously, interrogate the feeling, considering the reasons behind your stress, the people who might be causing it, and the qualities of the stress experience. How do you behave when you're stressed? What do you tell yourself when you're feeling anxious? Recognize the patterns in your responses. That's what you've got to do to control your stress. Put it in perspective. Well, time for us to talk about the secret daily teaching for your life. This is all about a positive mental attitude. You deciding if you're going to be successful or a failure, rich or poor, happy or sad. You do it every morning when you look in a mirror and you say, wow, it's going to be a fantastic day today. I'm going to be productive. I'm going to be profitable, and I'm going to make everybody around me happy. Well, the lesson for today is, how do you become more aware? One way is to stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking now? What am I feeling now? The moment you ask, you are aware because you have brought your mind back to the present moment. Yeah, always stay in a situation, in a case, in a sense of reality. Well, you know what today is? Sure you do. We all know what today is. Today is Thursday, December the 8th, and it certainly is somebody's birthday. Well, we've got a number of birthdays for today. You know what? We ate up a lot of the clock, so you know what? Let's just get right to them. Here's somebody who was born in 1886, passed away in 1957, a world-famous Mexican painter, an active communist, and husband of Frida Kahlo. Happy birthday, Diego Rivera. And how about this guy? Born in 1943, passed away in 1971, the lead singer and lyricist of The Doors, and is widely considered to be one of the most charismatic frontmen in rock music history. Happy birthday, Jim Morrison. And then finally, born in 1966, an Irish singer-songwriter. Happy birthday, Sinead O'Connor. Yeah. Well, you wonder about what was going on today in history? Don't wonder anymore. Just sit down and relax. I'm about to tell you. On December the 8th, in 1953, Dwight David Eisenhower gives the Atoms for Peace speech. And in 1980, John Lennon is shot and killed by Mark David Chapman in front of the Dakota apartment building in New York City. And then finally, on December the 8th, 2008, Christy Williams elected as leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, the first female leader of a political party in Wales. Yeah. Well, our quote for today comes from Joseph Campbell. Joseph says, your sacred space is where you can find yourself again and again and again. And it is now time for some interesting but useless facts. I got a number of them and just about a minute to give them to you. So here, let's not waste any time. Did you know that the perfect game in baseball is one in which the same player pitches the entire game without allowing any player of the opposing team to reach first base by any means? There you go. That's it. And how about this? Did you know that for more information on eagles, check out our Eagles Fact page. Do that on the internet. How about this? Did you know that the largest breed of rabbit is the Flemish Giant? Did you care? Well, you know. How about this? It took 214 crates to transport the Statue of Liberty from France to New York City in 1885. Wow. Can you imagine? Like a puzzle to put that together, huh? And we had to build a pedestal. So give that some thought. You know what? Do you know what? To go one lunar day, adjust your watch to lose 2 minutes and 5 seconds every hour. Yeah, isn't that something? Yeah. How about this one? Did you know that one 75-watt bulb gives more light than three 25-watt bulbs? I guess so. I didn't know that. Makes sense, I guess. How about this? Did you know that the hieroglyph for 100,000 is a tadpole? Didn't know it. Didn't care. Let me leave you with this one. 45.2% of people pee in the shower. Now give that some thought the next time you walk into a shower. You know, even a public shower. Yeah, give it some thought. Now, don't go away. When we come back, we're going to do our tribute to the late, great Paul Harvey. And the rest of the story, today's story is going to be the death of John Dillinger. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Isn't it time to shine the spotlight on your expertise? The Interview, starring you. Here's your chance to capture 5 minutes of fame with The Interview. This isn't just any interview. This is your opportunity to showcase your expertise and position yourself as a trusted expert in a one-on-one video interview hosted by Robert Cardoza, host of the nationally syndicated show Robert Cardoza Live and powered by AHA Studios. What is it? A professionally recorded video for your use. Robert Cardoza interviews you on the set where he records his show. Professional interview showcases your expertise and value, shot in a state-of-the-art studio. And what's in it for you? Gain credibility as an expert, earn the trust of your target market, educate in a way that intrigues your audience, gain a powerful marketing tool that offers dozens of uses, website, video sharing sites, social media, email, DVDs, direct mail, lobby video, resumes, profile building, all that kind of stuff. Association with the nationally syndicated celebrity. That's right. And let's talk about AHA Studios. AHA is a strategic marketing firm that leverages the powerful and visual persuasion to help your business create powerful messages that connect with your target market. AHA ventures way beyond strategy, delivering the marketing collateral you need to start driving a new business through your doors. AHA has a full-service, in-house, state-of-the-art production studio to bring your messages to life using video. Discover how to make The Interview work for you. Call 949-831-2222. That's 949-831-2222. AHA Image Studios Incorporated. Dr. Stephen Tidwell, General Family Dentistry in a caring, personalized environment. Here at Dr. Tidwell's office, we are dedicated to helping you keep your teeth healthy. We are a state-of-the-art dental practice that still believes in traditional values, such as excellent customer service and individual attention. We have a special welcoming offer for you for just $39, a complete exam, personal consultation, professional cleaning, and all necessary x-rays. That's a $266 value for $39. Dr. Tidwell has 2 convenient locations and experienced staff to provide you with professional care and personal attention that you deserve. Call today. Don't delay. A great smile another day. Call 909-944-7308. That's 909-944-7308 for Rancho Cucamonga or San Bernardino. Joel Saltzman is Dr. Wireless. He has turned his considerable expertise into consumer credit risk and wireless security into a highly specialized independent web-based consulting enterprise targeting consumer credit risk analysis and wireless transactional security and monitoring. He works as a wireless analyst, veteran independent agent, and consumer liaison for most wireless telecom carriers and equipment manufacturers. For more than 20 years, corporate and private clients and media audiences have counted on his unvarnished advice while weighing the technology, performance, and cost differences between Sprint, Nextel, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Joel specializes in setting up mobile wireless hotspots to be used for disaster preparedness, business continuity, and mobile wireless merchant processing solutions. Call Dr. Wireless at 310-400-4900 or go to his webpage at drwireless.com. Again, call 310-400-4900 or his webpage at drwireless.com. You'll be glad you did. And now, back to our show.
I am Robert Cardoza. You're listening to Robert Cardoza live on the street at the intersection of business and politics. We're at 4:53 p.m. Pacific time. Still 63 degrees here in the heart of the Inland Empire in sunny Southern California. Well, the sun's going down, but it's still light outside. Anyway, if you're listening to us on our globally syndicated network and you're in Madrid, Spain, well, it's 43 degrees and it's mostly cloudy. And if you happen to be in Sydney, Australia, it's 73 degrees and it's clear. But right now, let's do our tribute to the late, great Paul Harvey and the rest of the story. Yes, sir. You know what, Paul Harvey, what a guy. The American Broadcasting Company calls him the biggest voice in America. He's Paul Harvey, and each week, millions of listeners, viewers, and readers awaited his unraveling of the mysteries of events and the lives of people past and present. He was heard on over 1,400 radio stations, seen on 110 television stations, and read in 300 newspapers. The rest of the story has for years been exploring the byways of history with revelations that are intriguing, amusing, and surprising. Well, today's story, the death of John Dillinger. You know, John Dillinger, public enemy number one. There is still a great deal of controversy over how and when he died. Now, at last, let's see the record straight. In May of 1934, John Dillinger was hiding out. He had heard that many prominent gangland figures were submitting to plastic surgery, were having their faces changed and their fingerprints obliterated in order to become less recognizable, less detectable. The prospect fascinated Dillinger. He called his lawyer, and the lawyer mentioned the name of a German-born surgeon, a Dr. Loser. Now, Loser had practiced in Chicago for nearly 30 years. He had done time in Leavenworth on a narcotics rap. Now he was out. He was in need of cash. Yeah, but was he good? Dillinger wanted to know. Yes, Loser was a magician with a knife. So the arrangements were made, and on the evening of May 27, 1934, John Dillinger arrived at a weather-beaten two-story shack on Chicago's north side. It all went well. Public enemy number one would emerge incognito, surgically, permanently. Well, Dillinger's lawyer met him at the house, explained the details. The place was owned by a former speakeasy operator. No problem there. Dr. Loser and his assistant would arrive the next day. The flat fee was $5,000, 1/3 to the lawyer. The operation would take place in a bedroom, and Dillinger would recuperate in a back room. Well, Dillinger nodded, satisfied that everything was running smoothly. In the morning, the doctor and his young assistant were brought into the house. Dr. Loser was apparently confident. The assistant, on the other hand, appeared pale, nervous, dissipated. Loser examined Dillinger's heart, asked if he wanted a local or a general anesthetic. Dillinger asked for a general. Specifically, surgically, what was it that Dillinger wanted done? The bad man explained that he wanted 3 moles and a scar removed. He wanted a depression on the bridge of his nose filled with a dimple on his chin erased. Oh, yes, and the fingerprints. They must come off, too. Loser agreed. Dillinger disrobed, lay down on a cot. It was expected that in a matter of hours, the familiar face of the post office wall would be no more. Loser went into the bathroom and to wash his hands. Dillinger rested patiently as the assistant fashioned a mask out of a toweling. Through this, the ether would be administered. The gangster began to draw deep breaths. But in his nervousness, the young assistant gave too much ether too quickly. Dillinger's face was turning blue. The assistant started shouting. Dr. Loser hurried from the bathroom. Dillinger had swallowed his tongue. Loser grabbed the forceps, removed the gangster's tongue from his throat. There was still no breathing. John Dillinger, public enemy number one, was dead. In a rundown shack in Chicago's north side just prior to cosmetic surgery, John Dillinger died. An overdose of ether. But the surgeon, Dr. Loser, would not give up. He abruptly began artificial respiration. Eventually, Dillinger, who had technically expired, revived. It was 25 days later After successful surgery, the John Dillinger strode from a Chicago theater with the lady in red, and the FBI shot him dead. That's what history has said. But you know the rest of the story. You know John Dillinger died twice. And now you know the rest of the story. Yeah. Well, you know what? Don't forget to join us tomorrow on our show. Tomorrow we'll have John Matthews and I. We're going to be talking about conservative politics on our semi-weekly simulcast. David Garrett is going to be here with Garrett on the Law, and I'm going to continue to our tribute to the late, great Paul Harvey with the rest of the story. Please tell all your friends about our show here on the RLC Broadcasting Network and encourage them to get our app. I'll appreciate it. They'll appreciate it. And you know what? You'll appreciate it too. And it's absolutely free. What a great Christmas gift. Take care, folks.
That's our show for today. Beginning today, treat everyone you meet as if they were going to be dead by midnight. Extend them all the care, kindness, and understanding that you can muster. Your life will never be the same again. So many of our dreams at first seem impossible, then they seem improbable, and then when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable. You know, the real secret of happiness is to make others believe that they're the cause of it. Robert Cardoza Live is brought to you by blogtalkradio.com every Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, go out and make it a great day. Your host has been Robert Cardoza, the technical advisor, Matchstick Digital, and your executive producer, also Robert Cardoza.